Allow yourself for a moment to think back, to try to find the moment where you first encountered art as a young child, presumably. When you looked over the shoulder of a parent or a sibling or a friend and watched fantastic and unreal things emerge on a piece of paper or on a canvas, or even with a crayon on the wall as your mother yelled in the background. Try to think back to that moment. Perhaps you cannot do that. I would struggle to track down the first moment where I truly ran into art. And if you are of like kind, then perhaps we can shift this slightly. Imagine yourself as that 3-year-old or 6-year-old who might have run into those things. You now so excited about the opportunity to draw things, paint things, create things out of your mind, and go back to that little version of you and how that must have seemed so magical. And while I can't find that original moment, I can find a moment in particular. My father was an Air Force pilot here in the United States, and he flew in Southeast Asia for many years before he managed to retire out of that profession. And we didn't have access to a lot of cameras back then. We had these tiny little disposable ones, and you had real film cameras, but those were pretty clunky and difficult to maneuver. And so he didn't come back with photos of the things he did. But what he did do is he came back with drawings. In a lot of ways, these were simple pencil drawings, sometimes with some markers in there as well. And often as he progressed, they were ink drawings, which you might notice as you look at my channel here. It seems, though I am reminded in this exact moment, that has had some impact on me, and perhaps is the reason why I gravitate towards that kind of art in the first place. But he would come back with drawings of the animals and plants and creatures that he ran into there. Not all of them were done on site. Some were done from books or magazines that he was able to look at. Because we didn't have the internet back then, he wasn't able to look things up and research in that capacity. But he used art, his drawings, to show me this world that was halfway across the world, that I would not have a chance to visit for another 20 years or so, if I ever got it. Drifting back in my mind to that moment, and to try to find the hypothetical predecessor to that one, when I was younger and first realized what art could do, it seems almost natural that you can come to the conclusion that art is an adventure. It is this strange thing that allows you not only to record what happens in the moment, but to record things that are impossible, to communicate things from one person to another that can't be communicated in words. Art and visual media in general communicates in such a tremendously different fashion. And whilst both are beneficial, they are tools and can therefore be used quite differently. We are often teleported, transported into things and places we would never have the opportunity to explore or see through video games, through TV shows, through movies, through books, through other forms of art. And drawing, painting, art in general allows for this transportation. Not only is it this crazy tool that allows for that kind of thing, but it is an adventure in and of itself. Each time I sit down to make a drawing, I have some inkling of where things are going to go. The better I get, the more frequently I put my pen to page, the more accurate my assessment is of where that finished drawing is going to go. But it's never perfect. Maybe there are artists out there somewhere that are capable of envisioning something perfectly and putting it down. In fact, I know that there are, but I've never met one. I know that they exist hypothetically, I can see them online, but they must be fairly uncommon. And so for most of us, in some small measure, each drawing, each painting, each piece of art that we dive into is its own adventure. And that is an exciting thing, something that we ought not miss. It's not something you need to think about every single time you sit down to draw, but it is certainly something that is worth considering here and there. Because the piece itself is an adventure, that sketchbook is an adventure, and all of it is encapsulated in this greater adventure that is art making in the first place. I know few things that have taught me more about the world around me, about myself, about how I interface with other human beings, other than my creative endeavors. My drawings have often allowed me to express what I'm feeling far better than my words can. Sometimes I'm able to write things out when I have enough moments where I can sit there and really work over the words and make sure they communicate exactly what I want them to. But sometimes when you're feeling anxious, it's just easier to draw a little cartoon or fragmentary drawing of some kind that just communicates how broken things feel in your mind at that particular moment. Art allows for communication of different things than writing will, and then speech will. It's this beautiful, wonderful thing. And more than that, even if you're not trying to communicate something to another human being, you can often communicate something to yourself, or you can extricate something from yourself that needs to get out. There are often times where I'm having a difficult day, and certainly many, many times with my students over the years who are having a hard day. Maybe things hadn't gone well at home the night before. Maybe they just had a recent breakup, or, the sports team that they're a part of has a challenging game that evening, or lost one the evening prior. And yet engaging in the art making process, particularly when they made art that was a little bit different from the stuff that they normally did, that they could have some perfectionistic tendencies towards, those moments, that art, that individual quest or adventure was able to break them out of those scenarios. And I found this true too. Often for me, this happens with music. Sitting down and playing my guitar or writing songs is one of the best ways to take the emotions that I'm feeling, put them into something useful, and then have them so I can examine them. That's a huge part of it, for me at least, is extricating the feelings from myself so they can be held and they can be thought about. And I find that this is often, as I've gotten older, something that I can manage with my wife just via talking and communicating. But for many years, I either had to write them into song, I had to write them down in some fashion of journaling, or I had to work them out in an artistic fashion. And this is a productive, very human way to handle things. And in each of those individual adventures, it didn't always feel great. But in all of the movies and the books and the stories that we enjoy, not every adventure is a good one. And when I think of Frodo and Sam, their quest through Lord of the Rings is not really like a fun adventure. It is an adventure for sure. And Bilbo kind of talks about his adventure, and that's actually the word that he uses. And it's something that I think he looks back on with rose-colored glasses. And so when Frodo embarks on his quest, he's kind of hoping and expecting it to be something similar, this adventure that he thinks fondly of for the rest of his life. But Bilbo's quest was pretty difficult, pretty harrowing. He lost a lot of friends, he endured a lot of hardships, he was sick for a portion of it, he was cold, he was scared, he had to battle spiders. Yes, he had some of that, blood in him that allowed him to be more adventurous than the average hobbit, but still, it was very, very difficult. And yet he looks back on it as this wonderful adventure. But it wasn't in the moment. And Frodo and Sam's certainly wasn't. But it was good. And sometimes the art is that way too. That the individual goal or quest or adventure of that piece of art or that season of artistic endeavors is not always good in the moment as far as pleasurable. But it's good overall because it develops you as a human being. It gives you things to look back on and be proud of later. Practicing and learning anatomy is not a fun thing necessarily, though there are certainly methodologies you can use to make it more pleasant, and I would encourage you to find those. But when you look back on the season that you spent working on all those difficult things, you can be proud of the time you invested, proud of the progress you've made, and also just happy with the results. Those things are, ever so slightly different. The adventure is a good thing for us as human beings. And art is always an adventure. Even when you sit down to draw something that you've drawn 100 times, there's always this roll of the die as far as where certain things will land. And you can increase this too, which I find increasingly interesting and enjoyable the older I get. I now love sitting down and giving myself ample time, anxiety and stressless, where I will just draw something on a giant piece of paper. Sometimes I'll start with a sketch, sometimes I won't. I'll just start straight in my inks where I'm married to every mark that I make. When I was younger, I tried to do this, and it was something I thought of in a romantic sense. This will be a wonderful romantic notion of look at the things that I can just let flow out of my pen. And so seldom was it enjoyable, and so seldom did things turn out well. Most of the time it was just a bunch of marks, and I'd come back to making things that I made dozens or hundreds of times before because that was my comfort zone. and I knew it would turn out well. But now, being older, more experienced, and having fewer of those burdens on my back, when I sit down to draw something and I don't know where I'm going, or I have just a faint idea, it's often really invigorating. That individual adventure is exciting because I don't know where things are going to go. I don't know what this creature is going to be. I don't know what this robot is going to be. I don't know what this landscape is going to turn into. And I find that doing more of this is often an incredibly enjoyable and worthwhile pursuit. Because when you let your unconscious or subconscious mind begin to solve problems and to work through things, you're going to come to conclusions that you wouldn't have come to with your waking mind, with your rational thought processes. And sometimes those things are just crap. They're not good. They're not worth spending time on. And that's totally fine. I think a lot of people, and certainly my younger self, were in this situation where that kept me back from doing that, because the idea of wasting an hour of drawing time was just anathema to my mental processes. Why would I waste that time? I could be investing it in something else that could show off my skill or promote what I was capable of to someone else. But I don't care about that nearly as much now. I wish I could say I don't care about it at all, but it's just not true. There's always this sense of wanting to accomplish things and progress and grow. And there's, for me, a small sense of wanting to show off what I've done. There is some satisfaction when I'm happy with something, but I really don't feel like I need a lot of encouragement. If I don't like it, it doesn't matter what somebody else says about it. I'm just going to be like, well, that's cool. I'm glad you like it, but I don't. And that's what matters. And I feel like when it's your artwork, that's an okay perspective to have, but it can also be dangerous if you never feel like you're good with whatever it is you're producing. But nowadays, it's so enjoyable to just allow my subconscious mind to go and to see what happens and to see what kind of strange things I unearth. You've seen this on the channel if you watched for any amount of time, because I never used to draw the robots. I didn't draw the dragons, and I certainly didn't draw the Lovecraftian eldritch things that seem to haunt the corners of this channel. But those things are fun and enjoyable. They're gross and kind of creepy and macabre, and yet there's grace in all of those marks, because is that a wing? Is that a hand? Is that tendons? I don't know. And it doesn't really matter. It contributes toward the overall idea behind that concept. Each of those drawings in their own way has been an adventure. Sometimes an adventure in the dark cave where I don't know where I'm going. And sometimes I'm sitting there with a beautifully drawn map in the middle of day with several people alongside me, guiding me. And that's how art is. That there are sometimes those quests where it's very, very specific. You know exactly what you're doing. And sometimes you don't know anything that lays before you. Both have their place. Both are good and beneficial. But it's always an adventure. And so wherever you are on your artistic quest, I would encourage you to try to shift your thinking, to think of this as an adventure that you get to go on. And when it's difficult, to think of it like Bilbo does of his adventure. What is this going to be when I look back on it? And what are the benefits going to have been? And how can I encourage myself in the moment with the good that is being done here, that is being wrought from these moments of strife and struggle? Well, as always, thanks for being here. I hope that this video has been beneficial to you, and I hope that you are able to think and chew on the fact that your art is an adventure. And in a lot of ways, it's the adventure that you make it to be. How you look at it, how you think about it, informs how you react and how you think back on it in the moments to come and in this present moment. Shifting your perspective is an incredibly powerful strategy, and I would encourage you to do so. And if you can, shift it toward thinking about art as an adventure, because that's more exciting and that's more fun and it's more beneficial. Thank you to my patrons who are on the screen right now. If you want to check out the Patreon or the Discord, you can do so at the links below. The Discord is a lovely small community where we hang out, share the art we're working on, and work together on things like Smogust and Inktober and other art challenges. Well, have a good one, y'all. See you soon.